Are there any, like, well, let's start with this. Who all is new to Kubernetes? Who hasn't heard of Kubernetes before? Show of hands. No one. Everyone has at least done something with Kubernetes? All right. So I assume everyone has some familiarity with Docker as well. All right. Got a very experienced crew tonight. So I am Kaslin Fields. I'm a solutions architect at Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. Our office is just a few blocks down over at Century Square near Westlake Center. And follow me on Twitter at Kaslin Fields. I didn't put that on here, but you should totally do it. So tonight, well, I'll explain. So I presented at Cloud Talk in November, and I read this slide, and I think everyone enjoyed it quite a bit. So we're going to do a reprisal of that tonight. If you've never heard a safe harbor statement, I'm going to read it out to you today. The following is intended to outline our general product direction. It is intended for informational purposes only and may not be incorporated into any contract. It is not a commitment to deliver any material, code, or functionality and should not be relied upon in making purchasing decisions. The development, release, and timing of any features or functionality described for Oracle's products remains at the sole discretion of Oracle. Basically, don't make extreme life choices off of this presentation. So many of you probably haven't heard of Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or you've heard of it but you don't really know anything about it. That's fairly normal because we started developing this product only 3 years ago. We went public with it about 1.5 years ago. So this is a very new, very fast developing product. It started because, as you know, cloud is becoming more and more popular, and Oracle has this great presence in the enterprise space. We have all of these great enterprise customers, and seeing them wanting to move to the cloud, many of them have difficulties moving into the cloud for various reasons. So we talked to our customers about that, and we said, what would you need to be able to move into the cloud? And we decided to make a cloud based on that. We started by hiring people who have built the cloud before. We set up an office here in Seattle so that we could attract the best talent. And we told those people, if you were to do it all again from scratch, what would you do differently? We want our group to not make the same mistakes, but make whole new mistakes in building our cloud. So we're set up here in Seattle. We're quite a bit different from your average Oracle office. We like to say that our culture is quite a bit different. We have drinks and happy hours and do lots of fun stuff. We're hiring. So there's another point that I had here, sorry. So one of the advantages that we have in only starting 3 years ago, like I said, is talking to those enterprise customers about what they want. And one of the top things they mentioned was bare metal. They wanted to have the performance of bare metal, and they wanted to have dedicated boxes that, and all of the governance and control benefits that come with that. And they also, of course, liked a lot of things about the public cloud. Many enterprises are exploring the public cloud. Many of them would like to put more stuff in the public cloud, but have various reasons why they can't. Some of that being governance and control issues with bare metal. So they like the flexibility of the cloud. They like pay for what you use. They like that you can add capacity in minutes instead of spinning up a whole new data center, which we all know, of course, is very time-consuming. So in building Oracle Cloud, we wanted to combine both of those worlds, the world of on-premises benefits and public cloud benefits, and that's what we've tried to do. And as it notes here, we have some new SLAs that I will be talking about a little bit more in a minute. So like any public cloud, you would expect us to have certain offerings, and here is a list of many of those offerings. So we have, naturally, our bare metal compute, which we shipped with on day one. We have virtual machines, as you'd expect from any cloud. I'll talk more about what we offer in terms of containers. We also have GPU instances, which are pretty cool. We have a variety of storage options. We have an NFS storage service, archive, object, block, what you would expect. And if you've heard of Oracle before, you might have heard of this thing that we do called database. So we have some offerings around that as well. Here's a few more things that we offer in terms of services in our cloud. I'm not going to go into them, but just to give you an idea, over the last 2 years, we've built a lot of stuff. Here's a quick look at our compute offerings. So, like I said, we've got our VM options. You can choose from 1 to 24 cores. Our shapes are based on the number of cores. The amount of memory that you get along with those cores varies depending on the shape, and you can check our documentation for more details. Our bare metal shapes are pretty darn impressive. 52 core bare metal instance with 768 gigs of RAM, up to 512 terabytes of block storage is a pretty considerable beast. And of course we have our GPU instances, DINSIO. So depending on what your performance needs are, you should be able to find something that should suit your needs in our portfolio. Like I said, we also have this database thing. We have Oracle database on virtual machines, on bare metal. We've got rack on virtual machines. And if you wanted to spin up an Exadata in the cloud, we also have that ability. New and exciting, we just announced yesterday our new SLAs. It's an industry first end-to-end warranty in terms of we have availability, performance, and manageability SLAs. And this is something that our customers said that they really wanted to have if they were going to go into a cloud environment. Naturally, enterprise environments tend to be very reliant on service offerings. So we want to make sure that we can stand up to what our customers need, and our customers can rely on us to provide that. So here is a list of some of our SLAs. I find it kind of hard to read, but we've got our availability on compute, on our storage, management, SLA, performance. An interesting thing here is API error rate. In the past, if an instance was up and available, that's kind of all that matters in terms of SLAs. But on us, if our API is unavailable, then you start getting service credits back, because we believe in what we've built and we guarantee that our API is going to be up for you. And here's more detail on that. So you can see exactly here, if you're under 99.95% in performance or availability or manageability, you get so much back. Under 99%, you get that much back. What do these things actually mean? So in terms of block storage, we've published these numbers that we're willing to stand behind. And if we're not delivering you what we promise, then, like I said, according to the SLA, you get a percentage of your money back. So these are all listed on our documentation. If you'd like more information, feel free to look it up. And here's a bit about our NVMe performance SLAs as well. Jump over that for a second. And then for bare metal instances, we also have network SLAs. For the X5 instance types, we have 10 gigabit connections that we have SLAs around. And on the X7s, we have 20 gigabit connections, and we have 2 of those on the X7s. So you end up with 50 gigabits under SLA. Now I'm going to talk about Oracle and containers, now that you know a little bit about Oracle Cloud. So we joined CNCF this past year. We were at DockerCon, we were at KubeCon, we were at CoreOS Fest. we've been trying to be very visible in the community. We're making contributions to Kubernetes. Side note, we're actually one of the biggest contributors to the Linux kernel. Fun fact. But that was before we joined CNCF. We are putting images into the Docker store. We have WebLogic, we have Oracle Database, we have Java, we have a variety of different applications which you can find both in the Docker store and on GitHub for Docker images. Yeah. And we also have a variety of open source Kubernetes tools, like our case Terraform installer, which I'll talk more about in a minute, and Railcar and CrashCart, which are projects that you can go learn more about if you want to know what Oracle is doing with those things. So naturally, we know that when you're managing a Kubernetes environment, you come up against many challenges. Managing, maintaining, and upgrading a Kubernetes environment by itself is quite the task. Container networking and storage has its own challenges. You've got to manage all of your role-based access controls and then your CI/CD pipelines as well. So in order to meet these challenges, we have released a few different products, or are in the process of releasing a few different products. The first one is our container engine, which will be using upstream Kubernetes. It's a fully managed upstream Kubernetes service. And that is in limited availability right now. We will also have the Oracle Cloud Infrastructure Registry, which is exactly what it sounds like, a registry service on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. Oracle Container Pipelines. If you've been following container news, if you were at DockerCon this past year, you might have seen that we acquired a company called Worker, which is a CI/CD pipeline company. I sort of think of them as a competitor to things like Jenkins. So some of their products have been renamed to Oracle Container Pipeline, so if you're familiar with Worker, you might be familiar with some of those products. The FN project is a very interesting one. It's our open source solution to serverless, and I'll show you all that a little bit later. And we have an open source microservices framework if you're interested in that. So on Oracle Container Infrastructure, or Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, we have a variety of ways for you to manage your containers. Naturally, you can install Docker, you can use Terraform, which once again I'll go into a little bit more in a minute. You can run Kubernetes, Mesos, got Oracle Linux of course, Docker Swarm. It's a infrastructure as a service offering, so you've got your infrastructure. If you want to install these types of things on it, you can do it yourself. We also have the Terraform installer on GitHub, which is if you're not familiar with Terraform, by the way, Terraform is from HashiCorp. Am I saying that right? And it is a way for you to manage your cloud infrastructure. Many of our customers said that that was something that they were using for their existing cloud infrastructure. You can use it on Amazon or Azure. You can use it on whatever cloud provider you may use. And Oracle Cloud Infrastructure has our own provider for it as well. So if you'd like to manage your infrastructure using that, you can. And we also have a template for you to deploy Kubernetes clusters on us, modifiable sizes and all sorts of things. And like I said, the Oracle OCI container engine for Kubernetes, the managed service offering, which, as I said, is in limited availability right now. So when I get started with a new platform, I like to have some way to kind of play with it. I like to have something that I have a little bit more control of, but I didn't want to go full Kelsey Hightower Kubernetes the hard way. So that's where the Terraform Kubernetes installer comes in for me. So I set up Terraform on my laptop. I pull down the provider, I pull down the template, and I can deploy a Kubernetes cluster in about 5 minutes from kicking off the Terraform apply. So these clusters are fully available, they're scalable, creates all of the networking and compute resources that you'll need for your Kubernetes cluster, as well as getting Kubernetes up and running on them. It has the dashboard included as well if you'd like that. It has the networking. Currently uses Flannel, but if you're interested in more about the networking, you can check out our GitHub page about what they're doing with that. Like I said, you can choose your instance shapes as well. So if you'd like to run bare metal and VMs in the same cluster, you can do that. Or an all bare metal cluster if you want to be really powerful. Cool stuff. Like I mentioned, we'll have our Oracle Container Engine managed service, along with an Oracle Container, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure Registry. Things that you would expect from a container environment. We'll also have REST API, Home, DNS built in, all these developer-friendly features going along with our managed service. And since it's coming from Oracle, you know that we're going to make it enterprise ready with all of our SLAs, our high performance, all of our infrastructure promises backing that. Another thing I wanted to mention is we very recently released certification of WebLogic on Kubernetes. I don't know how many of you have used WebLogic before? A few. How many of you care about WebLogic? Yeah, that's what I thought.
So why?
That's okay. It's pretty cool though. So we do also support WebLogic on Docker. This is part of our support of open source technologies and container technologies. We support WebLogic and Oracle Database on Docker as well as on Kubernetes. Well, WebLogic on Kubernetes at least. I'm not quite sure what it's there. And you can find more information about that if you're interested in blog posts. We have a few of them about WebLogic, so if you'd like to know more about that, you can go check that out. Now, I think I've got a few minutes left, so I'm going to do a little bit of a demo. Oh, and I'm going to show off a few of our other projects on GitHub before I do that. I can get this onto the right screen. It's kind of difficult without a mouse. Alright. So one thing I wanted to point out, operators, they're all the rage. So naturally we made one for WebLogic. So this basically kind of tells, I like to explain it as it kind of tells Kubernetes how to manage WebLogic containers well. So you can learn more about that in here. It has instructions for how to get started, installation, all sorts of information. I also wanted to mention our Oracle Cloud Infrastructure Flex Volume driver for Kubernetes, managing Oracle Cloud Infrastructure volumes on Kubernetes. OCI Volume Provisioner, this uses the Flex Volume driver to provision volumes for you on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. We also have the OCI Cloud Controller Manager. This includes the service controller, which you would need if you wanted to use type load balancer on your services. Node controller and service controller. Right here. Yeah. And like I mentioned before, our FN project or function is our open source serverless. So we talked about this a little bit at KubeCon. John Mittelhauser was in Dan Cohn's panel where he talked about Oracle's approach to serverless. We decided to go open source rather than doing a closed source Lambda type of implementation of serverless. So This is available online if you want to go check it out on GitHub. And we also have a Helm chart for deploying FN if you'd like to check out serverless there. And like I mentioned earlier, if you're interested in setting up a trial account and playing with some of these things, we are offering a $500 free trial tonight. So if you want to sign up for that, let us know. And if I can get back over here. Next thing I want to show off. So this is Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. Most of you probably have not seen the console before, so I thought I'd do a brief console tour here. So this is a compartment. So the way it works here is I have a tenancy, and I have a user within that tenancy. So a tenancy is sort of the access point, and a user involves some user-based controls of who can deploy things. And then we also have compartments. So I'm in a K8s test compartment now is what I've named it. And depending on your user, you might have different permissions for what you can deploy in different compartments. This is our compute section. You can see here I have a little Kubernetes cluster that I've deployed using Terraform. So I've got just one master, one worker, and one etcd node here. You can change that if you want. I just spun up a little one. If you're interested in database, I don't have anything spun up right now, but we have a section for that. Our networking, and similar to other clouds you may be familiar with, we have a concept of availability domains within a region. So right now I'm in the US Ashburn 1 region. We have US Phoenix, US Ashburn 1, and Frankfurt right now, and we'll have London coming online soon. And within each of those regions we have availability domains. And over here, if you want to see what's in each availability domain, clearly my Kubernetes cluster is not highly available at the moment. But if you had it deployed across AVs and you wanted to see what was in each AD, you could see that. So I can change compartments. You can see I've got a variety of different compartments here. I don't have any compute resources in this one. Yeah. If you want to go to our documentation, you can get to. So it's kind of a tour of the console. Come back over here. Server. So let's see if we can do some fun things with that Kubernetes cluster, shall we? My kube config got kind of messed up earlier, so I'm going to be a terrible person and run kubectl commands from my master today. I know, I'm bad.
By the way, the big news this week was we got a lot more data centers. I'm not sure if you guys heard. It was announced earlier this week, like all over the world. Oracle.
In general, yes.
So what kind of coverage does Oracle have right now? I mean, in the US or geographically, how big of a footprint does Oracle have in terms of data centers?
So I'm getting a question, how big of a footprint does Oracle have in terms of data centers across the US right now? It's an interesting question. So the office here is Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. Naturally, we have many different products that have footprints across the US. We also have Oracle Cloud Infrastructure Classic. So it's also a cloud product. So the variety of data centers that we have across the country and across the world often include the Oracle Cloud Infrastructure Classic data centers, which is a slightly different team, which I'm not as familiar with. So I don't know the full footprint including those, but like I mentioned, we've got 3 availability domains in each region that we have up right now, which is Ashburn, Phoenix, and Frankfurt, and then London coming online soon. If you'd like to know more about that, you can find one of us. I have several colleagues here. Would you like to raise your hands? So if you
And
have,
definitely Classic at the moment has a lot of regional presence. You can choose from a lot of regions, but definitely if you don't need to be next to the user, like within 100 miles from the users, OCI would be definitely a way to go, since it's a new product that it's more resilient, better performing. The APIs are more sane.
And that's an objective review, right?
That's subjective. That's my personal opinion. Don't make any choices based on that safe harbor statement.
I like to say, don't name your firstborn child Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. We did not recommend that in this presentation. Even if we did, it's not good advice.
But definitely we advise use OCI. OCI Classic is there, and it's not going anyway. But if you have a new thing, deploy it on OCI.
Naturally. So I didn't prepare a huge demo tonight, but a quick demo with WebLogic, since I was talking about that today. I'm just going to run a quick WebLogic deployment. So you can see my WebLogic pod is creating there. And once it's done, I'm going to... You can ask questions while I'm typing, by the way, if you would like to. Grab my pod.
Maybe just elaborate on OCI Classic versus OCI. What is OCI
Martin, you were doing great.
Yeah, I was just directing my
Next
question
time
to him.
I'll stay quiet. Well, OCI Classic is a product that's been on the market for years. And it's definitely a previous generation of cloud offering. And there was a reason why we decided to come up with the new and better OCI, providing bare metal, providing different hypervisors. So if you look at the OCI Classic, it's using Zen as underlying hypervisor. If you look at the OCI, we're using KPN. We do provide things like nested virtualization, for example. You can run VMs on VMs if you want to. Our networking is great. Our networking is definitely one of the things I like the most about our product. It's simple, but it's very, very fast, and latencies are very, very low.
I'm not sure if I mentioned it earlier, but when we hired all these people to create this cloud, networking was one of the big things that they wanted to do really well in this cloud. They wanted it to be extremely high performance, and they wanted to have a lot of the management in the networking rather than on the boxes and things like that. So when we deploy new services, for example, it's fairly easy for us to make sure that those services are deployed across all of our ADs and regions because of the way our networking is designed.
And on top of that, since OCI Classic is an older thing, you don't have that much of a choice when it comes to power. We do have like cool processors, more memory than OCI Classic can provide. We do have a new GPUs. There are GPU instances on OCI Classic, but those are the older Kepler GPUs. We have a Pascals, and new things are coming soon.
Nope. Okay. What did I do wrong? Research things.
Oh, you need an extra space, right? Maybe.
You have to give port
Before the
connected
port.
to the,
Oh.
give them more space there.
Ah, I see. Good call.
So I've got a question for you. So Oracle has public domain Java,
It hates me today.
and you have WebLogic.
I'll remove the slash.
Can you help people
Oh.
figure out the best
That was silly.
Docker images to get out of public Docker for doing Java or doing WebLogic? Because if you look at all these people in this room, and you ask them to write a good Docker file, because they can get the base image, but then they've got to do something to add something to that base image. And does Oracle help you write better Docker files in order to get a better Docker image for your application, which is based on Java or based on WebLogic?
Well, if you're running WebLogic or Java applications in your containers, definitely check out what we have in the public registries and what's available there. There are instructions how to utilize Java, the Oracle Java builds with containers, and how to build them, how to run the applications, also how to run database. So just check the public registry. The containers are there. You can check them, and there are also fully supported containers in the marketplace.
Yeah, the answer is yes, and I think he was right, and to some extent we have this new offering, right, that we're calling pipelines, which is part of our container native offering, and we are hooking that to the registry, so you can deploy any code from GitHub or from Bitbucket, whatever it is, put it on your CI/CD, which is our worker now, and it builds the code, and then you can automatically get an image, a Docker image out of it, and it deploys into the cluster. So that's the vision that we are.
Yeah, because the issue I face is that if I have a Docker image and I want to use it as for a build process, I know I got to put Java in there and I got to put Maven in
Yes.
there. And I'm trying to decide that if I have my bare metal machine
Yep.
here and I have Docker running here,
Yep.
and I've already got Java installed,
Yep.
do I mount Java to that Docker image? Or I find a nice Docker image that already has Java in it,
Right.
and maybe I throw Maven in there. So that's what I'm
So
wondering.
the point is, due to licensing, due to the way that Oracle Java is licensed, it's not provided in binary form
Oh.
in the containers.
But it's not.
It's not. We do provide a Docker file for it.
Yeah.
The only point is you gotta go to JavaCon, Java Oracle.com, and download the package. Download the tar-zip package of Java, place it in directory, and then make Docker build. So you have a Docker file, and
Actually, that can be automated. There are Docker files that can automate the whole, accept the license and all that stuff.
yes, they can accept the license. I'm not a lawyer, so
Yeah.
I can tell you what to do.
Did I say that on TV? I didn't say that.
I don't see yet a team smashing the windows and arresting anybody, but from the normal standpoint, I can tell you download the tar-zip, use Docker
Correct.
file, and then build it. And sure, there are public containers that someone built that use some strange cookie that
Yes.
will allow you to download the Java without going through the website. But basically, it's like 3 clicks to download it. You just have to click accept the license, and then you can download the file. So it's not that big of a problem. And then I guess I don't know how. You can ask your lawyer, right? But you can always put it in your local. You build the container, and then you run the registry on your local host, and you already have it. You pull it from your local host, since you got to repeat the same process.
So I'll interject for a second and say, yay, did a demo. It's kind of a dinky little demo today, but so I deployed a WebLogic server on my Kubernetes cluster, and here's the admin console for it. Ta-da!
Yay!
Yay! There was another question. Do you want to take one or two questions maybe?
Yeah,
And then
a couple of
move on?
questions, then we'll take a break.
Yeah, just about your object store. Is it like a S3 clone, like what DigitalOcean did, where it's basically just the same API, or did you make a new API for your object store?
I think
It's awesome. It's built from scratch and it's super cool. And there are multiple APIs because
Yeah.
we have a native API, you have a Swift API, and you also have a S3 compatible API, so you can reuse your application without changing it.
In the earlier slides, you were talking about SLA and you mentioned about the managed SLA. I just want to know what's the metric for it and how you measure it.
what is the metric on how we measure specifically the management SLAs
Yes.
or the SLAs in general?
Management SLA.
Management SLAs. So I think, do I have a slide about that? No. So I did mention during the slide deck, the metrics that many of our SLAs are based on is in the documentation. And I also have that slide which had the information about the API error SLAs. I can't handle these two screens very well. I was gonna bring that back up and see if there's anything helpful in there. Yeah. So management, you see here we mention compute and block storage and database, and it applies to the API error rate. And these are what our SLAs are. There may be more detailed information about that in our documentation. John Horton might have more information on that, no?
Yeah, it's in the documentation. For each of these, we describe kind of how you would measure it, how you would report what you believe is an SLA breach to us, and then how that process goes, and then how the credits are paid out.
Yeah.
Cool.
And we have a public page showing the status of all the services.
Oh, yes, we do have a status page. If you want to know how long we've been up, if we're up right now, there's a page for that.
And it contains all the information about the outages. If something has happened or there was maintenance or outage, you'll find it there.
Cool.